Hello, and welcome to Insights with Dr. C. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas Carpenter. I'm a clinical psychologist who's been in practice for about 20 years. My wife, Mary Carpenter, licensed master social worker, and I are the owners of Insight Counseling Services in Rochester, Michigan. And today we have an important topic, and the topic is women in financial planning. And we have with us Rhonda Williams, who is a certified financial planner and certified divorce financial analyst, and she's with Ameriprise Financial Advisors in Rochester. She's here today to talk about having a healthy money mindset and some of the differences in financial goals between men and women. And I know Rhonda and I talked before the show, and she and I really want to have a message today to tell women out there to be empowered about this process and to not shy away from financial planning or how to handle your money or wealth or just some of the things that we're going to talk about today. It's very important that for you as a woman to be skilled and educated about financial matters and what you're doing and if you're left in a position to take care of money after a spouse dies or whatever the situation might be. But our message today is to empower you to be the best that you can be in any one of the given situations that we're going to discuss. So I'm so happy to have Rhonda here with us today. And I just think she's a wealth of information and can definitely help teach women how to empower themselves in relation to financial management. So why is it so important for us to focus on women in financial planning?
Well, I think that one of the largest factors when it comes to women and money management is that women have been underrepresented for a long time and underserved when it comes to money. Women have a lot of misinformation about their role with money and have allowed, other people to manage money for them and just given the pass off, maybe I don't need to understand it. Someone else will do that for me.
There's been a huge transition from June Cleaver.
Oh, yeah.
to 2016.
We've made a lot of progress in this area in that women, we have more women in the workplace, more women
Definitely.
with a 401k at work that they're managing and that they're saving money into. And there's certainly a lot of growth for women. Mm-hmm. But, I think there's a lot of work to be done still when it comes to financial literacy.
Right.
And that would be an understanding of basic financial concepts and financial instruments and how they can be used to help women reach their goals.
Right. Why are women more vulnerable when it comes to money?
Well, I think some of the vulnerability comes because we live longer than men. And so when it comes to planning for retirement and living out our lives, our money lives, women will need more money than men over the long run. And not just because we live longer. It's because women's health costs tend to be higher. We're also vulnerable because many women take time out of the workforce to care for children at home. Mm-hmm. So they're working, but it's unpaid work. It doesn't build into any pension plan that I know of or, helping them advance in that way. And then women are more likely to, be sandwiched. And while they're raising their children, maybe they're caring for an elderly parent at the same time. The women are more vulnerable because we tend to put other people's needs above our own, and we have less resources to go with that.
Yeah, I really had to resist making a crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you were talking that, we died off earlier because we've been stressed for years about money.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe. Yeah, or any other number of things.
Right. So, I had to really hold back there a little bit.
But you guys are gaining because I think that the life expectancy right now for a man is 78.
It is raising, yes.
And a woman is 83.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is definitely coming up.
And we have more and more women who are hitting that, centurion mark and living beyond
Oh, yeah.
it. Yes, and I don't know if you've been to a nursing home lately, but, I go to see my mother there and all of her other female friends, that there are far more women who are living longer. And
my grandma is 94 and has outlived 3 husbands. So
Wow.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. Rhonda, what are some of the differences that you see between men and women when it comes to financial management and just kind of their overall handlings of money?
Well, I think what I see, and it's kind of a nice dynamic when you have a man and a woman working together on finances, because, men tend to see a conquering aspect to having money, and that's a sense of power and a sense of success in their work, that they're able to save this money, and it's tied back to their work. And for women, it's more money as a tool and what it provides for her family, and that's why women may make more mistakes with money than men do. And men tend to see things very linearly, and so everything's very logical. We'll save for this because of that, and it'll be this way. And women don't always think that way about their money. And they tend to make more emotional decisions based on what their family needs. And so the two of those things together tend to work out well. But unfortunately, or fortunately, right, women at some point will end up managing money by themselves.
Right.
Because we live longer, or through death or divorce, a woman are not being married. Women are managing more wealth now than they ever have before.
Right.
In fact, women are almost to the point where they're outpacing men in the dollars that they manage. It's not money that they have accumulated and amassed on their own, but it tends to be money that is passed to them.
Right. Okay.
And so women will need to learn more about money in the future because they'll be managing more of it. And then you add to that, there are 2 times more female business owners that are starting brand new businesses right now than men. And you and I've talked about, there are more women in graduate school than there are men right now, and that the system is kind of, geared toward helping women grow and improve. But what we haven't caught up with yet is financial literacy, and that is doing the hard thing and learning about money.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point there that you and I had discussed, and that is there's a lot of research showing that the educational system is actually geared more toward females. And females are now outscoring males in several areas. There's a higher graduating rate of females. There's a higher rate of them completing a 4-year degree and then going on to graduate school as well. So not only, I think we're talking about 2 generations. We've got that generation where the female, a lot of money is passed down to them. Or their husband has accumulated a lot of money and now he's deceased and she is having to manage a large sum of money with very little understanding of how to do that. Then you've got an upcoming generation that I think are going to be very strong, have a lot of earning potential. And how are those women now going to learn to financially be fiscally responsible and handle their finances?
And how do they capture it? How do women capture it? Because women, and even in the workplace, women still tend to be behind on money. So on something like, and just earnings in general, we are not yet catching up. They're making progress, but women are still 27%
below.
Wage gap, inequality between men and women in the workplace for the same job. And so, women will always continue to be a little bit behind until we're able to close that gap. But we know that there are lots of reasons for that, time out of the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. But no matter what, it's time for women to kind of pony up and learn about money. And the reasons for that is as women's wages continue to rise and they start to accumulate money, it's up to them to learn how to manage it. And like you said, be fiscally responsible in how they make these decisions.
What do you see in your practice as some of the biggest fears that women have about managing money?
Well, I think some of this goes back to a money script that we were talking about earlier, about the messages that women get about money when they're younger. And you see it even within my field. So, there our ratio of men to women who are financial planners or investment advisors is still about 1 woman for every 4 men. And so we're not seeing women take on financial planning or investments as an interest even, or as a career,
Okay.
because I think there's a money script that happens when girls are younger, that this is not an arena that is meant for women. And so women get this idea that, they might not ever be able to understand it. And then, we were saying this about women, but I would have to say that it's an issue with guys too. Actually there's an ad out right now. I think it's a certified financial planner ad that talks about, you ask questions about everything except your financial advisor says, I think you should move from here to here, and nobody questions him. Nobody questions her. But in particular, it's time for women to start taking an interest in this because they will have more to manage, and it's up to them because they're going to live longer.
What are some ways that both of our professions can empower women to do that?
Yeah, I think help us get over the fear that they won't be able to understand it, or that it's not meant for them to understand it.
Okay.
And help them see that this is something critical for their longevity and for their financial well-being. And also turn it on its head to start, with a lot of women I talk about, this is something that you want to provide for your children or your grandchildren. Right. This is something that you want to do. Then let's be smart about it. Let's look at this and say, we'll save a little bit at a time. We'll start funding these goals. And once women latch onto a goal and they see that this is something that they can accomplish, then they can start to make progress toward that. And then also just, I think participating in the education about investments, being curious about what you have. If you're managing money, you should know something about that so that you're not vulnerable and that someone can't take advantage of you, because you understand how a mutual fund will have internal fees and is a grouping of stocks, and understanding the different kinds of stocks. And there are lots of ways for women to obtain that information.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. I know in practice, whenever I see widows, it's about the fear
it is about
that they
fear.
have. And I know with one that I'm working with, we talk about her living inside the box.
Yeah.
That she's lived most of her life inside the box.
Yeah.
And now her husband is gone, and she's having to step outside of the
box.
box.
Yeah.
And learn how to negotiate purchasing a new car. Or learning how to negotiate getting a lease.
That's cool personal growth,
Right,
know?
and that's how I've tried to frame that with her, that look at how exciting this is. Look at the new things that you're learning, and how does it feel to take those steps and know that that's something you did. You did it all on your own. But I think the nail, like I said, you hit the nail on the head with the concept of fear.
I think
it's
it is.
about fear and just being able to get past that.
And getting past it. But that's where information is wonderful, because learning how debt works, learning how your investments operate, understanding your estate plan. I mean, I had an elderly client a few weeks ago give me a handwritten letter of where she wanted her assets and her investments to go. And I'm like, that's great, but you've got a trust over here. That is a legal document drafted by an attorney that's going to be binding, and none of this matches up with that.
Boy.
And so it showed me that I thought she understood her documents. That as a financial planner, I try to empower women and help them understand what they're doing. But because she was older and over time, she drifted away from this planning that we had done, and thought that delivering, a handwritten note and saying, I want you to hold that in a file because this is who I want to get my money. It's like, wow, that's not a legal document.
Right, that's not something
that's
you
not
can do.
You can't do it that way. And just even understanding that if you want to accomplish something, how these vehicles work and how that's going to benefit you, and how you can use all of these tools to help you accomplish cool things.
Right.
So out of that discussion that I had with a client, we developed concept of doing some charitable trust work, which is really kind of complex, but because that interested her in taking care of other people, kind of like this hand from the grave, saying, I'm going to direct my assets to benefit people, not just for the next 5-10 years, but this could go on forever and benefit all the things that she cares about. And so I think once women can realize that they have goals and there are ways to get to their goals, and they start understanding it, participating in the process, I mean, there's no stopping women and what they can do.
You know, it's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about some of the past research that, and definitely when I was a kid, you always heard that boys were better at math. You know,
Yeah.
and research has come to kind of debunk that thought that
Yeah.
they're not better than in math. Girls and boys are about equal in their
Right.
abilities, and so
Right.
I think you've got a generation that may think, well, of females that, well, girls aren't good at math. I'm not good at math. Money involves math.
Right.
You know, but
It's
that
that
has
script.
really that script. But that has really turned around in the
Starting
last
to.
10 years or so, maybe even longer, of the educational system not seeing that males are better at math.
Right. Except when it comes to money. That I would have to say that even though girls may be coming along with math and understanding of math, most certified financial planners would agree. And I mean, the 2015 Gender Gap in Financial Wellness
Okay.
is tons of research talking about how women do not participate in decision making when it comes to money. We don't have an understanding. We don't seek out professionals to
Okay.
help us understand the issues surrounding money, and that, you know, we're pretty far behind on that as women. Yep.
Well, it's good that we have a
Yeah.
leader
Well, and I think
and an
that,
example.
and to encourage young women who might have an interest in money to talk to other women who are doing Money Matters. There are lots of women in banking and in insurance, and
Right.
and there are a few of us in financial advice that you can talk to, and encourage your girls to think about money.
Right. And I'm glad that you're on this show talking about this
Yeah.
idea and the community presentations that you give
Yeah.
to help empower women and girls to begin to think about
Yeah.
financial management and how important that it is.
Yes.
Yeah. You also work with couples.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about couples. What are some key needs you see for good financial responsibility in couples?
So in the same weakness strengths scenario, you know, where women tend to want to be about nurturing and taking care of other people, and men tend to focus on the details of money perhaps. There are a lot of families where it's reversed, where, you know, the woman is managing the checkbook and the husband, you know, is not as involved in that. But, you know, within that scenario, I think that a lot of women would still shy away from understanding their insurance, for example, and not understanding how their auto insurance policy gets put together. Because my goodness, I know my eyes glaze over when I look at my auto insurance.
It can be complicated.
It can be complicated. But at the same time, there might be a scenario in the future where that woman would have to make that decision on her own. And so I think that we need to kind of establish this with couples, that there's no pass, that we don't get to allocate one thing to the other.
Right.
You know, that everybody needs to understand it. You know, the typical financial planner scenario with a couple, 38% of couples send one person to the meetings, and it's always a guy.
Wow.
The women never come in alone, and 38% of the time they never come to the meetings. And that's very discouraging from a financial
It
planning
is.
point of view, because women have a lot to add. That if we're concerned about our future as a family, women are the ones that want to do the goal setting. And, you know, they're the ones who will say to me, you know, my marriage ended because, you know, the idea of retirement was a wish and not a plan. And women are the ones who want to set these goals and work toward them. And it's quite frequently that it'll be a woman who gets her husband in to talk about financial planning. But as soon as they get in the door to talk
They're
about
not
it,
part of the
women
process.
check out.
Oh, okay.
They check out, and they don't want to be involved in the analysis of what needs to happen, or the investments, or making decisions about investments. And I think, like you and I've talked about, a lot of that is fear, and that they tend to shy away from making these or learning about these things.
Well, and I think if that came up in therapy, I would continue to encourage that marriage is a partnership on every level. You know,
Yeah.
and even though you may be more knowledgeable about something in this area and I'm more knowledgeable in this area, these still have to be partnerships, and especially when it comes to financial management.
Because someone may end up doing it on their own.
Right.
Right. And that it's important that everybody understand the decisions behind. And sometimes I think I'll see couples who, you know, typically the woman who will get upset by a financial decision that's happened within the family. And part of it is a lack of understanding of how things work. And I've seen scenarios where, the wife is very eager to pay down any debt without understanding that that's 2 or 3% debt versus their portfolio, which could be earning, hopefully 8, 9, 10%.
Right.
And so they've just lost money by paying down debt. And they pay down the debt because they were afraid,
Right.
of losing money. And so, having a good understanding can help in the marriage dynamic. And, they might find that they have more interesting conversations with their spouse about money and more realistic expectations.
Well, you kind of broached another topic that I wanted to ask you about is what do you see as the differences in the types of financial mistakes that men and women tend to make?
So men tend to be a lot more aggressive than women in their
Okay.
investing style, and they like to trade a lot. And sometimes they're chasing after returns, and they want to go for something, buy low, sell high. They want to see that immediate turnover. The one thing that women do really well is they tend to be a buy and a hold. That if they like an investment and they understand it, they'll stick with it for a long time. And they may not have the fast growth that the more aggressive investor has, but women tend to, over a long period of time, slow and steady wins the race kind of idea. At the other side, though, women are not as open to new investment ideas, and for lack of understanding usually. And so they may hear something on the radio, and I get a lot of these phone calls from women where they'll say, I was listening to so-and-so on WJR, and he says this is a really bad idea, and I think that he's probably right, and I think I own this. And I'll be like, oh, okay, give me his name,
Yeah.
But helping them to understand that, not everything that they hear might necessarily represent what's happening with them. And, they may not be as open to new ideas because they heard about something from somebody else, and they rely on the wrong information a lot of times, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. What do you see as some things that women are smarter about when it comes to financial management?
Well, I think I was saying, women tend to be more patient with their returns, and they will be more willing to let an investment run its course, instead of trying to dump and chase something else. Women do a great job at goal setting. That if you can get them in the room and as part of the conversation, women do a wonderful job of identifying what's important in the family. And once you give them a goal to work toward and to say, you need to save X amount, they manage to figure it out if it's important to them.
Another area, and we haven't talked about this, but I could only imagine, and I do see this in practice, is that, once a widow has been left with the money, she has financial responsibility for this now. I often see her children come along and try to manipulate the situation, or because my relationship with mom is better than yours, I've got an in here to try to get my hands more on the situation, or and
well, they're vulnerable in that way, right?
Right.
Women are vulnerable because they may not have the full understanding of what their investments are, and so they will fall more prey to family members who might swoop in and take advantage of a situation.
And women are more relational.
And they're more relational, yes. And they may think, well, I'll lean on this person because they're willing to be involved, but that person may have an ulterior motive to what they want to have happen with the money. And and that's where having a great attorney in their life would be a good thing, who can kind of set boundaries for the family and say, mom's okay, and this is how we're going to protect her, and having a financial advisor. But I would say on the flip side, as women become older, I appreciate it when a healthy money situation is in place, where a child will come in with mom to make sure that mom understands what's going to happen to her money. But it's difficult to tell, what's a good situation, what's a bad situation at face value.
Well, and I think it's really important that women are involved in the process.
Yes.
Long before a death occurs.
Right. Women need to get engaged and become empowered.
Right.
And that's all going to happen by greater education, taking an interest in their own financial affairs, meeting with someone who can provide them with some knowledge, and move them forward.
Yeah, the death of a spouse is one of the greatest stressors that a person is going to experience in life.
Yeah.
And that's not the time to have all this
No.
kind of burden put on you
Right.
for financial responsibility.
right.
This is really
It's
a
a
process.
lifetime of learning.
Yes, it's a process that you want to be involved in as a woman early in the process. So that way you're not clueless, you're not in the dark, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with severe grief from the loss of your spouse and then dumped on in a financial way to now I've got to figure out everything. I've got to figure out what's going on. So Rhonda and I both want to tell women out there to be involved in this process. Get involved. Know what's going on. Know your plan. Know your estate planning. So that way when it's time for you to grieve, you're free to do that and you don't have a lot of other worries.
That's really true. That's really true.
Yeah, I just think that's so important for women to hear. You know,
Yeah.
and it may not be the most fun thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, it may not interest you. There may be a lot about it that you don't understand.
Yeah.
But it still is very important that the women are involved.
Right.
And
it's key to our success and how if we want to grow as women and see some of these issues resolved, like the wage gap inequity or, you know, women's ability to grow asset and own businesses and to do these things will happen as women understand money more.
Right. Yeah. So especially young women, don't be afraid.
Right. Don't be
Of this
afraid.
process.
Yes. That you have the same brain cells to understand this.
Look at this woman. She's a fine specimen of a beautiful lady, and she understands all this.
Yeah.
You know, and so you can too, as a viewer out there. And if you're a female who's coming into starting a business and having money to invest, you can understand this process.
That's right.
It just takes some education.
Yep. And achieve the things that you want to.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, Rhonda, we're so happy that you've joined us today. I'm just so happy that I know you and that the show can have you on and discuss so many of these important topics when it comes to money, because you and I know the research that financial conflict is one of the top issues in families and in marriage that cause issues.
Right.
And it just doesn't have to be that way.
Nope.
It can be planned out. Well, in closing today, I would just like to invite you to visit our website, www.insightcounselingpc.com, or visit our Facebook page, Insight Counseling Services, where you can submit topics that you would like to see discussed or questions that you would like to see addressed. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, live well.